Good afternoon, Trinidad and Tobago. I'm Karen Kuzia. Phillips C News is live at noon. Topping the news at this time, a suspect who had been arrested by police in connection with the Malabar double murder has been shot and killed by police. C News understands Kendall GARCIA, also known as Sausage of New Valencia, Valencia Old Road, was shot by officers of the Central Division Task Force at around 4 o'clock this morning in Orange Valley, Cuba. Police say he was being sought by the Aruca Homicide Division. Meanwhile, a relative of the Malabar murder victim, Nafisa Rose Mohammed, has been arrested by police. This came hours after 2 men were released. Mohammed and 13-year-old Videsh Subar were killed at her home on June 28th. According to defense attorney Farid Ali, homicide officers arrested the 54-year-old suspect and took a formal statement before he was allowed to access a lawyer. A 25-year-old Sangre Grande man who was allegedly beaten and forced to sign a statement remains in custody. Now, according to Ali, the Director of Public Prosecution's Office is to be approached at this juncture of the investigation. He noted a decision will be taken with regard to the laying of formal charges for robbery and murder against the 2 men left in custody. Ali is representing both accused. Police are investigating the death of a man who was found along the roadside at George Street, Port of Spain. Police say at around 4 a.m. they received a report of a man lying motionless on the side of the road. Upon checking, they found the man with several gunshot wounds. He is yet to be identified. Further news now, government is looking to reintroduce community policing. This from Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley. It's expected to be controlled by the various regional corporations. Dr. Rowley made the statement as he was answering a question about the progress of local government reform at last night's conversations with the Prime Minister. He said legislation for that will be taken to Parliament as soon as it resumes and will give the corporations more responsibility.
Not the least of which we are heading towards allowing local government to collect and spend certain revenues which may accrue within the districts. And with respect to your first point about community role in working with law enforcement, we are actively considering a reintroduction and support of the community policing arrangement which will bring about that cooperation between law enforcement and communities.
Meanwhile, the Minister of National Security said in the next month the National Crime Prevention Program should begin to take effect.
Establish a connection between the Ministry of National Security and the 14 municipalities and Tobago House of Assembly. We're going to have community councils at the various municipalities relating to the Ministry of National Security, which will extend again the whole concept of community policing and community involvement.
And the Prime Minister has said rogue members of the protection services must be weeded out of the system. Dr. Rowley said this type of criminal activity is even more harmful than regular citizens committing offenses.
If you think it is bad when an average citizen commits a crime like that, when it's committed by a uniformed officer who has the trust and the imprimatur of law, it's far worse. So among the things we're doing in the police service is trying to weed out from the service persons who are unsuitable for the jobs that they are holding in the police service. It's happening too slowly, but it's going to have to happen.
While concerns about poor teaching facilities within the Point Fortin area were also raised during conversations with the Prime Minister, which took place in the borough last night. Megan George, who lives in Point Fortin and is training to enter the teaching service, outlined the issues.
Talk about inclusive education and equity and education for all. Yet we have a preschool in a community center for over 40 years where the ceiling collapsed and there's no form of security. And the therapeutic and life skills center, which caters to persons with special needs, which has established for 13 years through a church.
Education Minister Anthony Garcia then gave an assurance that concerns were being addressed.
With respect to the early childhood center, that is in a state of dilapidation, I want to assure you that during the July-August vacation period, we have earmarked a number of schools where we are going to fix those schools so that when school reopens in September, those questions or those problems will be solved.
This is the C News Live report at noon. Remember, you can keep up to date with all the latest news on our website at ctvtt.com, or you can check out our Facebook and Twitter pages at C News Live. There will be no increase to water rates at this time. Government, however, is looking to review the financial operations at the Water and Sewerage Authority. This from Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley as he responded to a question from a Facebook user during his conversations in Point Fortin last night.
We have to review the cost of operations and the ability to fund those operations, and we are going to be, not so much TNTech, but WASA in particular, we are going to have to review the use of funds at WASA because WASA is using up a significant amount of money and we are not getting value for money at WASA.
Well, the Lemont Road Fishing Pond in Sangre Grande water supply project has been completed and will be commissioned tomorrow. According to WASA, the pipeline project has improved the water supply to approximately 278 households in the area, while the permanent road restoration works saw the rehabilitation of 6.1 kilometers of roads from the corner of Eastern Main Road Vega de Oropuch to Lemont Junction. And Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley says government has borrowed money to ensure there were no significant job losses during the economic downturn. During conversations with the Prime Minister on Tuesday night, Dr. Rowley said governments have continuously borrowed money to upkeep its lifestyle, borrowing some $30 billion from 2008 to 2014. He explained this change in 2015 as the government had borrowed $12 billion to ensure the economy would not collapse.
In the period 2015-2016, in order to prevent the economy from collapsing and causing the kinds of hardships that you may not even think about, this government has borrowed $12 billion. In short, what that means, in order to keep our payments and our expenditure going, we have had to borrow to fund our lifestyle.
He said borrowing money had been a regular occurrence even when government's revenue was high. But now that it isn't, previous expectations in terms of salaries cannot be fulfilled.
And during a period when earnings were quite strong and future projections were quite positive, certain kinds of salary increases could have been afforded. Today, when we are facing and living the reality of those kinds of reductions, it would not be a reasonable expectation that you can get the same kinds of support from the government as you were getting when revenues were.
The Prime Minister said there's been no major layoffs in the public sector, but admitted some job cuts have occurred.
If you look at the number of persons employed in the country, 2015, about 61,000. A little less, approximately 60,000 persons are employed now. So we've lost a few jobs, but we've also created quite a few jobs.
Well, PSA President Watson Duke says the Prime Minister should not make decisions on public servants without first consulting the union. Mr. Duke was responding to statements by Prime Minister Rowley at the conversations with the Prime Minister in Point Fortin last evening. Mr. Duke held a news conference in Tobago this morning. Patricia Nicholson was there. Patricia, good afternoon. What more can you tell us that came out of Mr. Duke's press conference?
Hi, Karen. Well, Mr. Duke says that there are 80 policies, rather, as opposed to 50,000, as according to the Prime Minister. Mr. Duke also said the Prime Minister is manipulating the figures and kind of creating some sort of mischief. Duke said the Prime Minister's statements come as a threat to public servants and that he would not be allowed to get away with mischief. Mr. Duke said the Prime Minister has been preaching doom and gloom and has not given citizens any words of encouragement or even words of hope, especially those in the public service. Duke said public servants are about to face some of their darkest days, and he cannot allow it to happen. And that is why, according to Mr. Duke, he has opted to run again for president of the Public Services Association after 8 years. He said he cannot just sit by and look at public servants go through some of their darkest days and not do something about it. So he is going to run again for president of the Public Services Association so that he can assist the workers who are being affected.
Thank you very much, Patricia. Now for the weather. Occasionally cloudy periods with light to moderate showers in varying localities can be expected. There is the chance of the heavy shower or thunder shower occurring in few areas. Gusty winds and street or flash flooding can be expected in heavy showers and thunder showers. Tonight will be initially settled at first, but will become cloudy with showers as the night progresses. Minister of Energy and Energy Industries Franklin Can says government will do what needs to be done to keep state-owned Petrotrin alive, and he's urging the relevant stakeholders to play their part. This as he responded to questions from members of the public last night.
Because we are now coming to terms with the challenges that Petrotrin face. And as a government, and as the Minister of Energy, and in conjunction with the Cabinet and the Prime Minister, we are going to craft solutions for Petrotrin in the best possible way to keep that company afloat, to keep it alive, but everybody, every single stakeholder, from the trade union, from the management, from the residents of Point 14, has to make sacrifice. I say no more.
However, Minister Can criticized Petrotrin's failure to invest in Trinidad. He said little had been done to improve Trinidad in a decade.
Petrotrin made some fundamental investment errors. I don't want to go into it in details, but how can you spend over $6 billion on a refinery upgrade and didn't spend a cent on Trinidad to upgrade the platforms and the infrastructure, the compressor station and the pipelines?
Meanwhile, Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley has called for a more focused approach with regard to the construction of drilling platforms. He explained the Angeline platform was lost because we acted like we were competing by ourselves.
We lost the Angeline platform because of two reasons. One, a delay in the decision-making on that plant, and two, the sending of signals in this part of the country, in the Southwest Peninsula, that price for construction of platforms cannot be guaranteed, and we behave as though we are competing against ourselves. So when a project is had, we can have work stoppages on a regular basis and demands being made.
He said another opportunity was on the way, but this attitude has to be corrected.
We've lost the Angeline platform. There's another one in the pipeline coming. We have to understand that we are not competing against ourselves for these projects. We are competing against other platform producers in Louisiana and Texas and so on. And we have to behave in a way to attract that investment to this area.
To other news now, newly elected president of the Interreligious Organization, IRO, of Trinidad and Tobago, Archbishop Barbara GRAY-BURK, says one of her first orders of business is to lobby for a new space for the organization. Burke, who is head of the Spiritual Baptist Faith, is the first woman to hold the position since the organization's inception in 1970. She replaces brother Hari Prasad Maharaj, who would now serve as trustee of the organization. Archbishop Burke explained the condition of the current space.
Because it was, you know, if you're claustrophobia, you could get ill.
We begin with news of football. With Honduras right around the corner, the national men's football team will engage Ecuador in an international friendly as they prep for a return to World Cup qualifying. Dennis Lawrence's men will get a stern warm-up test when they travel to Guayaquil on July 26 to face the Ecuadorians on home soil. Meanwhile, negotiations are ongoing with another South American team for another friendly in mid-August, as the Warriors try to stay sharp at the business end of their campaign, where there is no margin for error. TNT currently lies bottom of the 6-team hexagonal table, but wins in their next two encounters could see them quickly vault up the standings and into at least 4th spot, which guarantees a playoff with an Asian qualifier. To cricket now, the West Indies ladies registered back-to-back victories at the Women's World Cup over in England, handing Pakistan their 13th consecutive defeat in World Cup play. After posting a bold 285 for 4 when they were put in, the Windies benefited from a maiden century from Deandra Doughton and 90 from skipper Stephanie Taylor, then limited Pakistan to 117 for 3, chasing a revised target, and they were 19 runs short under the Duckworth-Lewis method. And the Trinidad and Tobago under-17 youth started the defense of their title with a big win over regional powerhouse Barbados out of the Brian Lara Cricket Academy. The Bajans won the toss and elected to bat first, but stumbled to 169 all-out in 46.3 overs, with Jordan top scoring with 33 and Rifa adding 30 in support. Bowling for TNT, 4 bowlers had 2 wickets each to go along with 2 run-outs. In reply, TNT started slowly and despite losing 2 early wickets, consolidated with Francis getting 28 at the top of the innings, but Julian with 41 and Mahabir Singh 35 not out helped TNT reach their target of 170 for 5 to win by 5 wickets. In some cycling news now, Nicholas Paul is like a man on a mission over in Europe as he continues to make a huge impression with fans and UCI officials alike. The talented youngster from South Trinidad, who has been turning heads at the UCI Academy in Switzerland, was up to his impressive ways again this past weekend. Riding in the UCI Class 1 event in Italy, Paul finished a creditable 5th in the match sprint event, after earlier producing the fastest time in the qualifying flying 200 event. But he went even better in the elite men's keirin by finishing 3rd to mount the podium yet again. Well, that's it for sport. And that's the CNews at Noon Report. I'm Karen Cozier-Phillip. Remember, for up-to-date and breaking news throughout the day, you can visit the CNews website at ctvtt.com. Do have a good afternoon.